5 read the Bible in a year. Exodus 16, 17, and 18. Exodus 16. They took their journey from Elim, and all the congregation of the children of Israel came to the wilderness of Sin, which is between Elim and Sinai. On the 15th day of the 2nd month after their departing out of the land of Egypt, the whole congregation of the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron in the wilderness. And the children of Israel said to them, "We wish that we had died by the Lord's hand in the land of Egypt, when we sat by the meat pots, when we ate our fill of bread, for you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Then the Lord said to Moses, "I will rain bread from the sky for you, and the people shall go out and gather a day's portion every day, that I may test them, whether they will walk in my law or not. It shall come to pass on the 6th day that they shall prepare what they bring in, and it shall be twice as much as they gather daily." Moses and Aaron said to all the children of Israel, "At evening you shall know that the Lord has brought you out from the land of Egypt. In the morning you shall see the Lord's glory, because he hears your murmuring against the Lord. Who are we, that you murmur against us?" Moses said, "Now the Lord will give you meat to eat in the morning, in the evening, and in the morning bread to satisfy you, because the Lord hears your murmurings, which you murmur against him. And who are we? Your murmurings are not against us, but against the Lord." Moses said to Aaron, "Tell all the congregation of the children of Israel, come close to the Lord, for he has heard your murmurings." As Aaron spoke to the whole congregation of the children of Israel, they looked towards the wilderness, and the Lord's glory appeared in the cloud. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, "I have heard the murmurings of the children of Israel. Speak to them, saying, at evening you shall eat meat, and in the morning you shall be filled with bread. Then you will know that I am the Lord your God." In the evening, quail came up and covered the camp, and in the morning the dew lay around the camp. When the dew that lay had gone, on the surface of the wilderness was a small round thing, small as the frost on the ground. When the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, "What is it?" For they didn't know what it was. Moses said to them, "It is the bread which the Lord has given you to eat. This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Gather it everyone according to his need, an omer a head according to the number of the people. You shall take it, every man for those who are in his tent." The children of Israel did so, and some gathered more, some less. When they measured it with an omer, he who gathered much had nothing left over, and he who gathered little did not lack anything. They each gathered according to what they wanted to eat. Moses said to them, "No one leave it until the morning." They didn't listen to Moses. Instead, some of them left it, some until the morning. So it bred worms and became foul, and Moses was angry with them. They gathered it morning by morning, everyone according to what he wanted to eat. When the sun grew hot, it melted. On the 6th day, they gathered twice as much bread, 2 omers for each one, and all the rulers of the congregation came and told Moses. He said to them, "This is what the Lord has said. Tomorrow is a rest day, a holy Sabbath to the Lord. Bake what you want to bake and boil what you would like to boil, and all that remains over, lay up for yourselves to be kept until the morning." They laid it up until the morning, and as Moses had ordered, and it didn't become foul, and there were no worms in it. Moses said, "Eat this today, for today is a Sabbath to the Lord. Today you shall not find it in the field. 6 days you shall gather it, but on the 7th day it's a Sabbath. In it there will be none. On the seventh day, some of the people went out to gather, and they didn't find any. The Lord said to Moses, "How long do you refuse to keep my commandments and my laws? Because the Lord has given you the Sabbath, he gives you on the sixth day the bread for 2 days. Everyone stay in your place. Let no one go out of their place on the seventh day." So the people rested on the seventh day. The house of Israel called its name manna, and it was like coriander seed, white, and the taste was like wafers with honey. Moses said, "This is the thing which the Lord has commanded. Let an omer full of it be kept throughout your generations, that they may see the bread with which I fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you out of the land of Egypt." Moses said to Aaron, "Take a pot and put an omer full of manna in it, and lay it up before the Lord to be kept throughout your generations." As the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. The children of Israel ate the manna 40 years until they came to an inhabited land. They ate the manna until they came to the borders of the land of Canaan. Now, an omer is 1/10 of an ephah.
Exodus chapter 17. All the congregation of the children of Israel traveled from the wilderness of Sin, starting according to the Lord's commandment, and encamped in Rephidim. But there was no water for the people to drink. Therefore, the people quarreled with Moses and said, "Give us water to drink." Moses said to them, "Why do you quarrel with me? Why do you test the Lord?" The people were thirsty for water there. So the people murmured against Moses and said, "Why have you brought us out of the Egypt to kill us, our children, and our livestock with thirst?" Moses cried to the Lord, saying, "What shall I do with these people? They are almost ready to stone me." The Lord said to Moses, "Walk on before the people and take the elders of Israel with you, and take the rod in your hand with which you struck the Nile, and go. I will stand before you there on the rock in Horeb. You shall strike the rock, and water will come out of it, that the people may drink." Moses did so in the sight of the elders of Israel. He called the name of the place Massah and Meribah, because the children of Israel quarreled, and because they tested the Lord, saying, "Is the Lord among us or not?" Then Amalek came out and fought with Israel at Rephidim. Moses said to Joshua, "Choose men for us and go out to fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with God's rod in my hand." So Joshua did as Moses had told him and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went up to the top of the hill. When Moses held up his hand, Israel prevailed. When he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were so heavy. So they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat on it. Aaron and Hur held up his hands, the one on either side. His hands were steady until sunset. Joshua defeated Amalek and the people with the edge of the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Write this for a memorial in a book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the memory of Amalek from under the sky." Moses built an altar and called its name, "The Lord is our banner." He said, "The Lord has sworn, the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation."
Exodus 18. Now Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard all of what God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, how the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, received Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her away, and her 2 sons. The name of one son was Gershom, for Moses said, I have lived as a foreigner in a foreign land. The name of the other was Eliezer, for he said, my father's God was my help and delivered me from Pharaoh's sword. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with Moses' sons and his wife to Moses into the wilderness where he was encamped at the mountain of God. He said to Moses, I, your father-in-law Jethro, have come to you with your wife and her 2 sons with her. Moses went out to meet his father-in-law and bowed and kissed him. They asked each other of their welfare, and they came into the tent. Moses told his father-in-law all that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardships that had come on them on the way, and how the Lord had delivered them. Jethro rejoiced for all the goodness which the Lord had done to Israel, in that he had delivered them out of the hand of the Egyptians. Jethro said, blessed be the Lord, who has delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians, and out of the hand of Pharaoh, who has delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods, because of the way that they treated people arrogantly. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifices for God. Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to eat bread with Moses' father-in-law before God. On the next day, Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood around Moses from the morning to the evening. When Moses' father-in-law saw all that he did to the people, he said, what is this thing that you do for the people? Why do you sit alone, and all the people stand around you from morning to evening? Moses said to his father-in-law, because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a matter, they come to me, and I judge between a man and his neighbor, and I make them know the statutes of God and his laws. Moses' father-in-law said to him, the thing that you do is not good. You will surely wear away both you and this people that is with you, for the thing is too heavy for you. You are not able to perform it yourself alone. Listen now to my voice. I will give you counsel, and God be with you. You represent the people before God, and bring the causes to God. You shall teach them the statutes and the laws, and shall show them the way in which they must walk, and the work that they must do. Moreover, ye shall provide out of all the people able men, which fear God, men of truth, hating unjust gain, and place them over the people to be rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s. Let them judge the people at all times. It shall be that every great matter they shall bring to you, but every small matter they shall judge themselves. So shall it be easier for you, and they shall share the load with you. If you will do this thing, and God commands you so, then you will be able to endure, and all these people also will go to their place in peace. So Moses listened to the voice of his father-in-law and did all that he had said. Moses chose able men out of all of each Israel and made them heads over the people, rulers of thousands, rulers of hundreds, rulers of 50s, and rulers of 10s. They judged the people at all times. They brought the hard cases to Moses, but every small matter they judged themselves. Moses let his father-in-law depart and went his way into his own land. I love how the people were hungry, they wanted some food, well, they started to complain, but how God said, they'll know that I'm God because I'm going to give them some good food. He was giving them quail and manna. And the manna, I guess, was like wafers with honey. I mean, honey helps to give you energy. It is one of the best foods that you can eat. This is what I've heard. When you need to survive, honey is decadent and it's good. So he was giving them quail. He was feeding them some good food and just what they needed. But he said that there was certain things that they had to do. Just make sure that you don't go on the Sabbath and try to get more because there's not going to be any there. Well, I want you to rest. Yeah. And what did they do? Some of them went out and looked anyway. He's like, come on people. So we can see that people haven't changed.
It's true. And just a side note, every time I read this, I think back to my childhood growing up in the Anglican church. And when we take the communion or the sacraments, I remember the little white wafer thin pieces of bread. And I would think, is that what manna looks like? I don't know. We don't have an idea. They put some in a jar for later generations to see, but it was just a side note.
Yeah, I don't know if it still exists. I mean, that's another
I
thing.
don't know.
But I know that honey is something that
A superfood.
Yeah, and it preserves.
Yeah.
So they have found honey from thousands of years, and it's still perfect. So
Sure.
it actually never goes bad.
One thing I marveled at is the Israelites. As soon as they faced trouble or hardship, even a little bit, they started to complain. Even to the point where they said, "Oh, we were eating pots of meat back in Egypt." Weren't they just crying out to God to be saved from Egypt in slavery? And then they want to go back to Egypt as soon as they face trouble. I think it's a notice for us as Christians today to remember what God has pulled us out of, and not be tempted to go back into the sin that he saved us from, because we were slaves to sin, but Jesus set us free.
It's quite a transition when you get out of slavery. My great-grandparents were slaves, and when they were released, they didn't have anything. They didn't have any land. They didn't have any food. They were promised land. They were promised some things, but they didn't get it. So imagine there was millions of slaves in the United States who were, from one day to the next, they were no longer being fed.
Yeah.
So they had to figure things out, and they hadn't had to do that ever. They hadn't had to go and do it for themselves and live. So it's a hard transition.
Sure.
For anybody. And at the same time, you didn't see these maybe there were some who wanted to go back. There was probably some who wanted to stay in the comfort of the home. It was easier in that sense.
Sure.
As far as being provided for. So for myself, I see it more as fear of the unknown, fear of starvation, fear of what's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to our children.
Yeah.
And I think that as humans, that can just happen so easily when something unexpected happens. We have a dream, and it starts to come true. Wow, this is happening. Then something kind of takes it sideways, and we start to think, why did this happen, God? Where are you leading me? What's going to happen to my family? What's going to happen in the future? It could be health. It could be finances. But I think it's so easy to become afraid.
Yes.
And I think these stories, these incidents that happened in the Bible, helps us to remember that nothing's changed, that there's always been a time where people were afraid and didn't trust God, but that God's always there. He is always there to provide for us.
It brings up the next point, where they go to war, and Moses commands Joshua to find an army to go battle against Amalek. God really reminds the people it's not you that's in control. God was all the way through reminding people that he was in control, even to the point where when Moses held his hands up, the Israelites were winning. But as soon as his hands drops, Amalek would start to prevail. Mm-hmm. God was showing people, don't worry about the future. I've got you, and it's me that's in control.
It's true. It's been this year, well, I guess in the past 6 or 7 months, I've really started to understand more the power of prayer and how important it is for us not to take things into our own hands. Why do that? Why do that? Because God is much more powerful. So if we pray for a situation, for someone, we still need to act and do something to serve and help and do whatever we can. But after, even more powerful and more effective is actually praying for the situation, praying for the people.
Yeah.
Because God can work in a way to make things happen much better than us if we were to worry about it or try to take it into our hands in a bad way.
It's true. It's true. God is always working in situations. We just need to remember that he's working. And the next chapter we looked at about, I thought it was interesting, where Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, comes and said, what you're doing is not good. You're going to wear yourself out. What did you think of that?
Well, I thought it was really neat that Jethro was his father-in-law, and Moses was this amazing person, a leader, and it just really shows the humility of Moses. He took his father-in-law's advice. He was a great man, a great leader, leading a million people, but he didn't let it go to his head.
Yeah.
He was still taking the advice from Jethro to have less burdens on himself, to choose people, wise people, people who were godly, not just wise, but godly men, who could help take on the responsibility so that Moses wouldn't get overburdened and burnt out, but also so that the needs of the people would be properly taken care of, because otherwise some of the people's needs and some of the people would have fallen by the wayside.
Yeah, it's true. And I really like the point that you were saying to me earlier, that Moses found his voice. It was really cool because he was so afraid to talk, but God worked on his heart to mold him into the man where he starts to lead with his own voice, not his brother Aaron's.
He got some confidence,
yeah,
some trust in God. I guess, dividing a body of water in two and seeing a million people walk over in dry land and then watching the army, get killed. I think that would do something for your faith when you're the one who actually put the thing on the water. So you would hope so anyway.
That's great.